This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsch.
Oh, here's Frankie.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fists. My name is Frank Lotierzo, part-time writer, full-time observer. It looks like now I'm joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, who had a little trouble with technology. Jack, what's going on? You do this all the time.
The studio had a problem with technology, not me.
Any name you want to drop?
You had it from your end, and our producers had it. I was following their directions. I was given a direction sheet by them.
And
I like to put the blame elsewhere because that's what fighters do. They always blame something. They never take accountability. So why should I take accountability?
Well, Jack, you've had enough fights, as in IE shows. You should be able to have this system down. Anyhow, you saved me because now I don't have to go it alone. We have a plethora of subjects to talk about, but first, how are you?
Good. A lot to talk about, as you said.
Hi, Brian. I'm fighting a cold, runny nose. I've been sneezing. I can't clear my throat. So you are going to speak more words than me tonight. I hope that doesn't bother you. Can you handle that?
I don't like to say much, Frank, but I'll carry it tonight if need be.
All right, I'm just going to throw out the topics we're going to try to touch on. We're going to talk about Fury Usyk. We're going to go heavy on that. We're going to talk about Conor Benn's win over Peter Dobson, Shakur Stevenson's Fugazi retirement. We're going to look ahead to Teofimo Lopez's upcoming fight with Jamie Ortiz. Beterbiev and Bivol was signed for June 1st. Austin Trout won a bare knuckle title. We're going to talk a little bare knuckle and compare that to glove boxing. And if we have time, we'll discuss the pro debut of a fighter who I think is probably the best fighter who turned pro, Sugar Ray Leonard, since 1977. It was on this date 47 years ago. He made his debut. I don't think a greater fighter has come along since then. But, Jack, let's kick it off with what everybody has been talking about for the last 4 or 5 days. The unification bout between Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk was postponed. They were supposed to meet February 17th. Usyk got cut. There was talk that Philip Hrgovic was going to step in for Fury to fight Usyk. That's been scrapped. The fight has been scheduled for, I think it's May 18th. Usyk had 11 stitches. This is reminiscent of the Ali Foreman bout when the champion, Foreman, got cut sparring Bill McMurray about 5 or 6 days before the fight. The fight was scheduled September 25th. They pushed it back to October 29th. Some reminiscent here, Jack. Some people thought Foreman inflicted the cut himself because he wasn't in good enough shape. And I've heard people say that that was the case with Fury. I don't believe it. The cut is legit, not a hoax. I think it is legit. I think Fury wants the fight and will go through with it. Time is yours.
Okay, let's give Fury the benefit of the doubt and say the cut was legit. Who cares, Frank? Who cares? You name me another big name fighter who we were talking about before a major fight and discussing whether or not he was going to pull out. That was the big question surrounding Fury before the fight with Usyk. So it's like someone who's robbing a bank over and over. Then they finally catch him, they bring him in, and they find out, guess what? He's innocent. He didn't actually rob that bank. but he did it a number of times before. Who cares?
But Jack, the problem is that many people feel that Fury doesn't really want this fight and is looking for a way out. I don't think you and I feel that way, but that is why he does not get the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I'm not that sure. I disagree with them. I mean, I think if push came to shove and Fury in his own head thinks, if I'm in top condition, if I'm at the top of my game, I should be able to beat Usyk. He's confident of that, okay? But is he willing to sacrifice?
Is he
Fury's
capable?
had some mental issues. Can he go to camp for 12 weeks straight, and just put his full head into it? Fury strikes me as the kind of guy who doesn't care after a while. He says, the heck with it. Even if I'm not the best in the world, I'll make my money. I'll live my life. The heck with everyone else. They're all doozers or whatever he wants to call them. And who cares at this point whether the cut was legitimate or not, or Fury faked it at all? I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. But you want to know something? I have some doubt. Let's say I'm 80% certain the cut was legitimate. Okay? And there was no hanky-panky on Fury's part. And I'm going to ask you, Frank. You're saying, oh, no, the cut was legitimate. Is it fair to say you feel 90% that way, but there's a 10% feeling maybe, there's a little chance that Fury manipulated the whole thing? Because you know what Fury strikes me as, Frank? The wrestler that cuts himself. I was once at a show, the minor leagues of wrestling, and I always thought growing up the blood was ketchup. They had these little packs. But you know what these wrestlers actually did? I found out when I was backstage. They had a razor. They actually cut themselves. They actually,
like in Rocky 1.
It's crazy, but they cut themselves on the forehead too. And it's insane. So we have a little doubt when it comes to Fury, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I'm sick of this whole Tyson Fury thing. And by the way, he didn't look like he was in tip-top shape.
Yeah, there's a lot of pictures floating around. You don't know when they were taken, but to me, he didn't look like he was in great shape, Jack. And based on the film that they floated, if that was the cut when it happened, it looked to me as if it was an elbow. And the thing that I'm surprised that nobody's talking about is how wobbled he was by that shot. And I am starting to believe that the drugs, the alcohol, the inactivity, the up and down in weight, the brutal fights with Wilder, I think, and then the fight with what we saw with Ngannou, I think that this guy is diminished, and I think that could be a telltale sign. I'm sorry. He was wobbled. His legs shook from that shot. It wasn't the biggest shot. And it's like, I think that's something that has me thinking about how I'll see the fight down the road. But I do believe the cut is legit. I think Fury needs the limelight too much not to fight. I still don't see what he sees in Usyk that would scare him, other than we know Usyk is in great shape and can fight 100 miles an hour for 12 rounds. And that might be the one thing that could be trepidation for Fury, because maybe he just can't get himself in shape like he could 3 years ago.
Yeah, two questions stand out. The two things stand out. No one mentions Fury has an insurance policy in his pocket. That means a rematch clause. And maybe he's thinking along those lines, well, if I lose the first fight, there's always the rematch. You never know what he's thinking in that regard. But number two, more importantly, this conjures up memories of the rematch between Ali and Liston, in which Liston would have been in good form for the rematch. I don't think he would have won. I think he would have went the full 15 rounds and gotten outpointed by Ali had the original rematch taken place, and he had
in November of '64.
Right. That I would think Ali would have beaten him 11 rounds to 4. Liston would have been chasing. It would have been a decent showing by Liston, but not enough to regain the title. Is it possible that Usyk loses his edge between now and May? Was he in absolute peak form? So reportedly, he's continuing to train, but it's hard if you reach a certain peak. It's so hard to motivate yourself. Can you,
Jack? He can't train for a while because if he has stitches in, he can't put himself under stress.
Usyk.
Usyk. I'm sorry. Ali used it as to his advantage. He fed off of it. He took some days off and he kept training. I think Usyk is of the same mindset that Ali was before the Rumble in the Jungle. I think Fury, there's a part where he may think to himself, I will throw Usyk off. He was gearing up for February 17th. Now everything is up in the air till May 18th. So I think he might try to use it that way. But I think, look, the more time he hasn't prepared, Jack, I do think it affects Usyk. And to answer Joe's question, Joe, when does sparring stop? It all depends. I know cases where guys sparred up to 2 or 3 days before the fight, and other cases where they stop 2 weeks or 10 days before the fight. I would say on average, guys quit sparring 5 to 7 days before the fight. So there was plenty of time for Fury to be sparring. It wasn't too late. So I don't think that's an issue.
Back in the day, the guys used to have an actual fight, sometimes 5 to 7 days. We hear about when Sugar Ray Robinson lost to Jake LaMotta. One fight in his prime that he lost to a heavier guy. He fought him in a rematch 3 weeks later.
3 weeks later, right.
And he had another fight in between that against Jackie Wilson, the top of the line fighter.
Right. So I don't think I don't think there's anything funny there. Look, I think the cut's legit. I think Fury wants the fight because, as I said last week, Jack, Fury needs this fight. Usyk is a real fighter. Usyk is viewed as the best guy he will ever fight. He needs this fight. He has to win. He even has to look good because the stench from the Ngannou fight has not left him, and he has to clear the air. He has to be in good shape, and he has to look good. And look, I've never wavered. I'm going with Fury in the fight. I don't see me changing. I don't see what Usyk brings to the table to scare him other than stamina. So if he has that time to get in shape. But again, let's remember, he can't spar for a while, and he can't even do anything strenuous until that cut's healed. So it's not like he's buying himself a whole lot of time.
Frank, we don't know what's inside Fury's head.
No, nobody does.
You're saying he thinks what you want to believe he thinks. Well, Fury's thinking this. Fury wants to prove he's the best heavyweight in the world.
Jack, I do think there's a legit case for that because he's embarrassed from what happened with Ngannou. He has to get his mojo back, and the only way to do that is to beat a legit guy like Usyk.
Well, the way to actually do it, it would be go back with Ngannou before fighting Usyk again. Go back with an immediate rematch. Say, I'm really embarrassed about this. Before I fight Usyk, let me wipe the floor with Ngannou. I want to set the record straight. Ngannou would have taken a rematch with Fury, snap of a finger. You offer him a decent purse. They could have worked out the financial parameters. Fury is one of the few independent fighters. What I mean by independent, promoters can't dictate to him. He's big enough to tell Frank Warren and Bob Arum, his promoters, who he wants to fight, what he wants to do, and they'll never put their guy down in public. They'll go along with everything he says because they know ultimately he needs money. He's going to make a nice profit to everybody concerned once he gets in the ring. So you put up with his insanity. If he really wanted to set the record straight because he was embarrassed, he would have gone in with Ngannou again. No getting around that.
Jack, I think he wants a fight. I think he wants to get another fight under his belt to help him get in shape for that. And I think he's hoping in the meantime, Ngannou gets knocked off and he can say, look, I kick Usyk's ass. And you know what? Anthony Joshua just beat Ngannou. I don't need him. It was a one-off for me. It was a bad night. It was an anomaly. I don't think that he has to go to Ngannou right away or immediate rematch. I think Usyk gives him all the credibility back.
What I don't like about the rematch, there's a clause in there. Now for the May fight, if either guy pulls out, there's a $10 million penalty. Why the heck should Usyk pay a penalty? The penalty should be strictly on Fury, not on Usyk at all. Because Fury pulls out of this fight, Usyk is penalized too, and he's agreeing to it. I like his manager, Igis Clemens. A very nice guy, one of the nicest guys in boxing. Really a good person and a good manager in that he's accommodating to the media because I've dealt with him. Unlike some other managers whose name I'm not going to mention, that he would agree to that penalty. I mean,
Jack, remember why that's there though, because they really want to ensure that this fight happens because they have a lot of money invested, a lot of capital, a lot of PR. And remember, if Mabudu didn't make it where Ali and Foreman could not leave Zaire before their fight, there's some people that think that fight would have never happened. And the only reason why it happened is because neither guy can leave the country. So I think that this is an insurance policy, which it is exactly. You couldn't be any more truthful about it, to make sure this fight happens. If either guy tries to pull something funny, it's going to cost them. So I don't have a problem with that. I believe the fight happens on May 18th.
Frank, you said as far as they were trying to save the show temporarily, Hrgovic to go into fight. What they should have been having for both guys, if they really wanted to save the show for either Fury or Usyk, whoever would have
somebody on standby,
someone training, in shape, a plan in place, and pay the guy. I'm not saying pay him millions, but pay him enough to make it worth his while, because they're number guys. You could have paid, for example, well, not Joseph Parker to go against Fury because they're buddies, okay? But Joseph Parker would have been there to go against Usyk, perhaps. Maybe a Jared Anderson who's promoted by Bob Warren, who all of a sudden Jared Anderson, the heavyweight of the future, is the forgotten heavyweight, so forget the heavyweight of the future talk when it comes to him. But if he stayed in training and you put $500,000 aside, he has to keep in shape. He's got to train. You keep checking up on him. And all of a sudden Fury pulls out. You put Jared Anderson in with Usyk. It's an interesting fight, even though Usyk probably wins. Anderson supposedly maybe a future heavyweight champion. So it has a degree of interest. Maybe even a Deontay Wilder. You pay him to keep in shape. You give him $1 million. That Deontay Wilder can come in on short notice and he gets millions for a fight against Usyk. All of a sudden he could fill the slot.
Well, Jack, maybe they've done that this time. But I don't think they're going to need that. I think the fight's going to come off because I do believe both guys want the fight. Usyk needs it for his legacy, and Fury needs it to reestablish his legacy. So I'm confident, barring any injuries and any other unforeseen things, I think the fight will happen.
Well, but I don't want to. I feel with this postponement, I don't want to see a rematch. I wanted one and done, undisputed heavyweight champion in May if they do fight in May. And I don't want to hear about them fighting in October, for example, because there could be a delay in that fight and it just stretches out the heavyweight division. If Fury wins, I'd like to see him in with Joshua, assuming Joshua beats Nagano. Okay, but there are not that many interesting heavyweight fights when you think of it.
I disagree. I think there could be if they'd actually fight, but nobody fights.
Well, Joseph Parker's fighting Zhang. So let's see, if Zhang knocks out Joseph Parker, it would be pretty interesting, him against Anthony Joshua. Or against Fury, for that matter. Even against Usyk, it would be interesting.
All right, Jack. We'll see. I think we both think the fight's going to happen. Again, I favor Fury right now, not as much as I did, but I favor Fury. Now, there were two fights over the weekend. Did you see Conor Benn over Peter Dobson?
I did. Conor Benn, he flunked the drug test originally, and the British Boxing Board isn't licensing him to fight in England and the UK. He's went elsewhere, Conor Benn, like the WBC, and they want to give Conor Benn a pass, supposedly. And there's always going to be some doubt in these drug tests. The fighters could say they were given something unknowingly or something accidentally came up that's not really there, and on and on and on. But Conor Benn's made loads of excuses about that, but this is boxing. Remember with Canelo Alvarez, the contaminated meat. Is it possible? Yeah. If you want to believe that, fine. Okay. But, and there was these possible accusations with better beef, so on. So Conor Benn is trying to get his name back. Okay. His reputation. I'm a clean fighter. And the more he talks, the more he's been talking the past year, he doesn't sound convincing, but he was back in the ring with Peter Dobson. Okay. And Conor Benn couldn't knock out Peter Dobson. I'm pretty familiar with Peter Dobson. He's from New York. He's not an elite fighter. He's a decent, capable fighter. He's a capable fighter. He went the distance with Conor Benn. Benn won very widely on points. Conor Benn threw everything he had to Peter Dobson. For a lot of the fight, Peter Dobson tried to survive because he had no choice. Conor Benn was throwing heavy shots. But for portions of the fight, Peter Dobson was carrying the fight to Conor Benn, taking it right to him. So the fight's over. So Conor Benn says the only reason he went the distance because he tried to survive. I mean, he sounded like a delusional fool. A delusional fool. That's how Conor Benn sounded. Sometimes it's better for a fighter, just give the opponent credit. I tried my best. This is an unbeaten fighter. He would have beaten a lot of guys. Build the opponent up. Instead, I'll say it again. This is for you, Conor Benn. If you're listening, you sounded like a delusional fool. So think before you talk when you ask certain questions.
Didn't he call out Tank Davis after the fight?
I thought that was Chris Eubank. Eddie Hearn got in the ring. They badly want to make the fight against Chris Eubank.
Oh, okay.
There's that rivalry with the Ben Eubank with their dads.
Right.
There were real hostilities between their fathers back in the day, but now that fathers made peace after a long time. But the hostilities between Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn was somewhat similar to Ali and Frazier going at it. There was kind of that. Seemed to be that hatred there, a little more on the part of Nigel Benn. Chris Eubank's the naturally bigger guy, but the fight means a ton of money. I mean, who knows how it would go in the ring? Conor Benn's improving a lot. Pretty good fighter. Chris Eubank in his last fight against Liam Smith looked outstanding. But the point is, why should Chris Eubank, who had a contract to fight Conor Benn, and the fight got canceled because of Conor Benn's issues, why should he feel pressured to go in with Conor Benn at all? He could put him in his rearview mirror for good and be justified. But Eddie Hearn too, when his guy Callum Smith got knocked out by Artur Beterbiev, he questions Artur Beterbiev's test. The testosterone level was a little high.
Of course.
But he didn't fail any legalized test at all. But meanwhile, he's defending Conor Benn. Oh no, Conor Benn didn't do this, that, for pointing to another fighter. You kind of lose credibility when you promote. I know a promoter wants to back his own guy, but you lose credibility when you talk from two sides of the mouth like that.
Jack, you say why should Eubank fight Conor Benn? I would say, and I know it's gonna make you crazy, but you know what? It's probably one of the few guys with somewhat of a big name he can beat. Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. do not hold my interest that much. I think they're B-level guys, and when they step up, they'll both be taken apart. but it's a big money fight for Eubank, and Eubank probably wins it.
In the UK, it's massive.
It's a big
I
fight.
would compare it as a big event, similar to when Carl Frack and George Groves, filled Wembley Stadium or something. There was 80,000 people there, massive crowd. 80,000 people. How come we don't have ballpark boxing in the United States, Frank? We don't have it anymore in a big stadium. That would be great in the summertime. Fill this big, giant ballpark.
The only problem is we need to get guys that people want to see. All right, Jack, there was another fight, a WBA light heavyweight eliminator. I saw Joshua Batasti score an unimpressive, slow-paced 12-round decision over Daniel Aziz. Both guys, they were friends. They sparred together. Batasti built a lead. Slow-paced tactical fight. Was credited with 2 knockdowns. One was probably a slip. Batasti is now probably in line to fight Dimitri Bivol. He's his mandatory. Obviously, that won't happen until after the Bivol-Beterbiev fight, which we'll go into next. I don't see Batasti as a threat to Bivol, but I guess we really can't even worry about him until after the Bivol-Beterbiev bout that's just announced for June 1st.
The theme to that fight you just mentioned were both guys being good friends. And you kind of wonder, with good friends fighting one another, I think of a couple of cases, Jake LaMotta and Rocky Graziano or something. I know Rocky Graziano and someone else, and it could have been Tony Gennaro. Did he ever fight Rocky? I don't remember clearly, but
Graziano fought Gennaro.
Graziano, right.
No, wait, and so did Jake.
No, Jake never fought Graziano. He fought
Gennaro.
Right. But I think Gennaro said to Graziano, if I recall the story right, Graziano didn't want to fight him, and Gennaro said, pals tried to make one another a few bucks, and then Graziano said, gee, I never thought of it that way, but your guy, and my guy too, but your guy more so, because you knew him a little better than I did, and you're from the Philly area, Smoking Joe Frazier would never fight Ken Norton, even though the fight could have been made at some point. It could have been. There was an opening to make that fight. Joe's thing was, he's my pal. No amount of money would ever make me fight him. Norton was more receptive, but Norton loved Joe Frazier, one of his best friends. So Norton was very careful with his words. He says, business is business. It would never be personal, He was saying how much.
If there was a title on the line, I think it might have happened.
If Norton were the champion, chances are Frazier might not have gone after him.
I think he would have.
If push came to shove.
I think if there's a title on the line, I think they would have fought. It just never worked out that way because either Foreman or Ali had it, and they had rivalries with both. With both of those guys,
wouldn't even entertain the idea. It was a complete non-issue. They would shut it down immediately, especially Vitali.
I can think of a fight.
Yeah,
Jack, I can think of one fight where 2 friends fought, or actually 2 fights. Evander Holyfield fought Henry Tillman, and Henry Tillman was in his wedding. And Ali and Jimmy Ellis fought. And I can give you another example where 2 guys they weren't friends, but they sparred all the time, and because of that, the fight turned out to be a dud. Excuse me. And that was Cowie and Spinks. They sparred 50 or 60 rounds, and I really do think that played into the fight not being so good.
I don't mean, no, good points you're making, but by the time Ali fought Ellis didn't really look at Ali as a friend. Yeah, he's a friend, but a friend when he didn't have the warmest feeling because Ali had trashed Ellis a number of times. He was the payday.
Ellis looked at him as the payday, and if he won,
he said all he did was beat my sparring partner. He would describe Ellis, and there was like a little bit of an edge there on Ellis's part. Ali liked Ellis, but he knew he was going to beat him. But
Ellis knew it too.
You mentioned Cowie and Spinks. Now we're going to get to Beterbiev and Bivol. So maybe this is lead into that. What is a better quality light heavyweight match? Was it the Cowie Spinks or the Beterbiev Bivol going in?
Well, Jack, I would say right now there's no question it would be Spinks and Cowie, because to me they're both two. Spinks is in the top 3 or 4 all-time great light heavyweights, and I think Cowie is in the top 10. I'm not sure Bivol is in the top 25, and I'm not sure Beterbiev is in the top 15. We'll see more after this fight, but it's a style contrast the same way, because you have the aggressor and the attacker in Bivol, like you had in Cowie, but yet Bivol and Cowie both could box. On the other side, you had the presumed boxer in Spinks and Bivol, the difference being Spinks can punch and take you out with either hand. I don't think Bivol's that guy, but I like the fight. I like the contrast in styles. Both guys are undefeated. They seem like they're about at the top of their game. So, boxer versus fighter. Jack, it doesn't get much better than that. It'll be for an undisputed title like Cowie and Spinks. So you can make a case that maybe, excuse me, it might be on paper the next best light heavyweight fight since Cowie and Spinks. Can you think of one that would since '83 that was that big in the light heavyweight division?
No, I can't think of a bigger fight. But with that said, this isn't a hard fight for me to predict. Certain fights, I want to wait. I want to delay my prediction. I want to analyze it more and more. And then when I make my pick, there's a level of uncertainty. This one, long before it was signed, I mean, I feel Beterbiev is going to halt Bivol. It depends how competitive Bivol will be. I can see him maybe winning some of the early rounds. I can see him maybe bothering Beterbiev. I can't see him holding him off the whole fight. I just can't see it. I think by about the 9th round, Bivol gets grinded down. I think it's a very decisive statement victory for Beterbiev. And all of a sudden, we look at Beterbiev in a different way. Like, wow, he's a monster. He's on the short list of the best pound for pound. And you know who's going to be watching that fight with anticipation? David Benavidez. Because if Bivol wins, you better believe the next
He'll
day,
be screaming for that fight.
Benavidez is going to be challenging Bivol. I can knock him out. He's going to talk very boldly. But if Beterbiev does to Bivol what I think he'll do, Benavidez is going to say, I have unfinished business in the super middleweight division. I want Canelo.
Let me ask you this, Jack. Now, based on what you just said, I can tell, and I'm not saying I disagree, but I can tell you know, like you said, you don't have to think about it, that you're pretty confident that Beterbiev is going to win. Yeah. Let me ask you this. Who has the best win between Bivol and Beterbiev? If you had to say who has the best win.
Well, if you change the question, who has the best win in the light heavyweight division, it becomes a little different. I know where you're getting at. Well, Canelo. I mean, Beterbiev hasn't beaten anyone like Canelo. But keep this in mind. At the time, Canelo signed to fight Bivol. Bivol was clearly the consensus number 2 light heavyweight in the world.
And he was a 5-1 underdog.
At the time. Now, we gave Canelo a lot of credit, and rightfully so, for taking on the man considered the number 2 light heavyweight in the world at the time.
With no catch weight involved.
Right. No, kudos to Canelo for doing that. But Canelo very consciously didn't want to take on number 1. He wasn't going to take on number 1.
But, Jack, that's not my point. That's not where I'm going here. Okay, so of the two of them, Bivol beating Canelo is a higher achievement than anybody that Beterbiev has beaten. Would we agree with that?
I would have to say, yeah, you can't, because it's Canelo, pound for pound.
Now let me ask you this: Has Beterbiev defeated anybody that you would pick to beat Bivol.
No, but it doesn't always work that way.
Jack, let me finish. I understand that. Would Canelo be favored over everybody that Beterbiev fought?
I suppose so, yeah.
Okay. When you look at it that way, I know it's not always the truth, dictator, but when you look at it that way, has Beterbiev done anything so impressive that he should be that much of an overwhelming favorite when you just admitted, and I agree with you, that both Bivol and Canelo would be favored and probably beat everybody that Beterbiev defeated. Now, would they defeat him the same way? No, because he's a bigger puncher than them. But the fact is, they would probably beat everybody he fought. So when I think about that fight, it makes it a little closer.
Well, let's play the comparison game just briefly, okay, with Joe Smith. Bivol wins a decision over Joe Smith, and a good Bivol. He was, it's basically the same Bivol beat the Joe Smith that Bivol of now is, for the most part, an established Bivol. Smith rocked him with a right hand at the end of the 9th round. Beterbiev utterly destroyed Joe Smith. It was man against sport. Just utterly destroyed him so easily.
Okay, and my retort to that would be Ali decision Norton and Foreman killed Norton. Duran decision Leonard, and Leonard stopped Hearns, but yet Hearns mutilated Duran. So to me, it's more of a style thing. Beterbiev is always going to look more impressive against mid-range guys, B-level guys, than a boxer like Bivol. So a guy that's a puncher that brings it every time, he's always going to look more impressive against mid-range guys. Like Mike Tyson is always going to beat Henry Tillman more convincingly than Evander Holyfield did. But when you put Tillman and Tyson together, it's a little different.
Yeah, I'll agree, but they're different style matchups, different ways fighters fight. Bivol's style might be a little harder for if you take all the opponents both fought to fight, because he's maybe a little harder to win rounds against. Beterbiev is a little easier to win rounds against. So
but you can only win a few before he grinds you down.
Right, until that point. But Beterbiev could just win round after round after round. Bivol could just win round after round after round with his style. It's a hard one to solve.
What's going to be interesting in that fight to me is, one, how will Bivol's chin hold up? Because Beterbiev is going to get to him eventually. And is there any way that he can make Beterbiev pay for coming in? Is there any way he can hit him just hard enough to take that little edge off where Beterbiev doesn't come at him like he's handcuffed? Although Beterbiev can jab, but he doesn't jab like Bivol.
Well, we'll analyze it more. It's a ways off. It's June 1st. So we'll go into full detail. But I just want to say this about that fight. It's taking place in Saudi Arabia. And if the Saudis had not stepped up the way they've been doing recently, turning the boxing world upside down, I wonder, does that fight take place at all? Because the only two places it could take place that could conceivably make it worth both men's while would maybe be in Canada, where people would turn out because Beterbiev is based from there, or in Russia, where they're not having any big fights, where they wouldn't pay big money for that. So you put Beterbiev in against Bivol at Madison Square Garden, you put it at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, you put it in Arlington, Texas, at Jerry's World Stadium. It just doesn't do colossal business. So I guess, the Saudis wanted to fight. This is a hardcore fans fight. It's not an average boxing fan's fight that they're going to care much about. It's a fight that you and I are going to care a lot about, the hardcore fight.
And that's a shame because it's the best fight really on the cards coming up.
Yeah. Agreed.
As far as, like you said, the meat and potatoes of boxing. It doesn't have the pageantry of Fury and Usyk, but as far as a real fight, a throwback fight, I have to think about, but it might be the biggest fight and maybe most anticipated light heavyweight title bout since Cowie and Spinks.
Yeah,
and that's good for boxing.
We were talking a little while about Bival's style, and tonight we're smooth. We'll go from one topic to another, just the lead-ins. Bival's style is similar to Shakur Stevenson's in a way. It's a spoiler style. Hard to win rounds against a style like that. Especially, and Shakur Stevenson, Frank, he announced his retirement. Frank, is it going to stick?
No. It's a fugazi. He's frustrated. Frank. He's frustrated because he hasn't landed a big fight. And I think it's a little bit of the Mayweather template. Say you're going away, make the people want you more and miss you more. Nobody believes that Shakur Stevenson is retired. I, for one, think it's frustration and to keep his name out there. We'll see down the road, but we'll see Shakur Stevenson fight at least once in 2024.
Now, do you have sympathy for Shakur Stevenson's plight, not able to get a big fight? Are you sympathetic?
No. I'm not sympathetic in any way, Jack, because if guys want to fight, they can fight. They just have to lower the price a little bit. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
I'm not sympathetic because Shakur Stevenson has the mindset of today's fighters. They're belt holders. They'll fight 2 times a year. If they fight 3 times a year, that's a lot. That's their mindset. All Shakur Stevenson has to do is think, I'm going to be in the gym all the time. I'm better than everyone I'm fighting. The only guys who have a chance of beating me would be a Tank Davis, a Devin Haney. Even though I think I'll beat them, they have a shot at beating me. Anyone else I fight, I can beat in my sleep as long as I train, I keep in shape. He should go to Top Rank, lowest price. I'm going to fight 6 times a year, every other month. Can you imagine the exposure after he keeps winning every other month? He calls out the big names. Everyone would be on his side. Shakur Stevenson.
But Jack, who's going to show it? Who's going to air it?
ESPN.
They're going to put him on 6 times in a year?
Every other month. Why not? It would be ratings. They're looking.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the concept. I don't think it's realistic, but I like the concept. I do believe though Tank and Haney are avoiding him more than he's avoiding them.
Oh, absolutely. He's not avoiding any of them.
And I believe Haney's probably going to move up in weight. Don't you think so? He's going to be a welterweight soon.
Yeah, Haney is, like you like to describe, cherry picking his spots. Okay, I admired Haney the way he went to Australia to fight Kambosos twice with the rematch clause. He earned it. I mean, he showed tremendous confidence, intestinal fortitude.
Beat him twice. Beat him worse the second time.
In another country. Kudos to Haney what he did, and you look what he did after he fought 2 fighters. Names past their peak. Lomachenko. I question whether Haney would have fought a prime Lomachenko or been as anxious. Money will make any fight, okay? But then Regis Prograis, and now he's picking his spots. Look at Ryan Garcia. He's talking about it. Yeah, of course he's going to be Ryan Garcia. Haney wants that fight badly. Garcia and Haney are reportedly negotiating. They're not going to be fighting one another, at least not now. Ryan Garcia is a good fighter. He's not an elite fighter. He's a good fighter, very good fighter, not an elite fighter. Ryan Garcia wants to fight the Raleigh Romeros, the Adrian Bronas, other names, guys he can beat and keep up his marketability. He'll only go in a big fight against Haney if the money is, outrageous. At the very least, Garcia would insist on a 50-50 split by Haney, even though Haney's more accomplished.
Yeah, Garcia has to do something to make people want to see the fight, to think he has a chance. Nobody thinks that's a legit fight.
Listen, a lot of fans, it's entertainment to them. They don't buy fights based on merit. It's all a show. It's entertainment. Ryan Garcia, for whatever reason, has a big following. The stoppage loss against Tank Davis isn't going to hurt him. It just got him more exposure. It's sad. So Ryan Garcia signs to fight Devin Haney. All the trash talk and all the nonsense, the numbers are going to go up. It's not. I don't buy into that hype, that nonsense, but a lot of people do. I mean,
I agree, Jack.
Mayweather wasn't an entertaining fighter. What did Mayweather go 8 years? I read something and I never gave it any thought. Did he go 8 years without scoring a knockdown?
I believe Justin Juco in 1999 until Ricky Hatton in 2010. Maybe Juco was 202. I forget, but yes, he went a while.
He went about 11 years without knocking anyone down. Yet he became the most watched fighter because of marketability.
He could talk, he could sell.
And some of I'm a big believer, Frank. Someone has charisma. Either you have it or you don't. And if you have it, there's no rhyme or reason. Mike Tyson was a street kid. He had all this charisma, even, when he was on the downswing of his career, and he couldn't knock anyone down. If Mike Tyson returned to the ring now,
everybody would want to see it.
People's mouths would be watering. Man, I and Mike might still have something up. They take out the old Rocky Balboa film against Mason Dixon to make his point, and people would buy into it.
No, Mayweather had manufactured charisma, and he did a great job doing that. And I think Ryan Garcia is trying to emulate that. We'll see how far it goes. Again,
Adrian Broner has charisma. Why? What's the attraction to Adrian Broner? He'd act vulgar. There wouldn't be anything endearing about the way he'd be acting. He wasn't funny. He wasn't amusing.
No, and he kept getting big fight after big fight.
Yeah.
Jack, there's another guy who's going to fight Thursday in Teofimo Lopez against Jamie Ortiz. Lopez kind of gets lost in the shuffle. He fought Ortiz, I think, in the National Golden Gloves. You could make a case he has two of the best wins in boxing right now, beating Lomachenko and undefeated Josh Taylor. But he's a guy that's kind of on and off, and you never know who you're going to get.
No, you don't. And it's funny. We talked about Shakur Stevenson's retirement, which we both know isn't going to stick. Lopez announced his retirement after his fight with Josh Taylor.
Yeah.
And how long did that last? I mean, give me a break with some of these guys, these retirements. And you mentioned Sugar Ray Leonard before. He was the master of the retirements and the manipulation.
Lopez is even talking about wanting to fight Terrence Crawford, which I don't see that ever happening because Crawford has nothing to gain. I think that's a joke, but I guess it's smart to throw your name out there or throw Crawford's name out there.
Well, Crawford has to fight someone, and it doesn't look
Jack,
like...
you believe the talk? I keep on seeing that he's going to fight Canelo in September after Canelo fights Charlo.
No, he's not fighting Canelo. He's fighting Charlo in May and Munguia in September. There's a possibility, flip-flop, it'll be reversed, Munguia in May and Charlo in September, but it's probably Charlo in May and, like I said, Munguia in September.
Why don't you think we'll see him and Crawford fight?
Because Canelo doesn't want to take the chance. It's too risky a fight. Canelo knows Crawford's a great fighter. And let's forget the size difference. Canelo isn't a physical presence. He's not a big guy.
No, they're the same height.
it's funny the way the mind works. I'm thinking of something I probably hadn't thought about for decades. I remember Jose Torres. When he was world light heavyweight champion, he challenged Muhammad Ali. He wanted to fight him for the heavyweight title. And after Torres is retired, I asked him, "Did you really think you could beat Ali? You yourself say Ali was the greatest heavyweight of all time." He says, "Yeah, I thought I had a chance to beat him based on this. Ali was a heavyweight who didn't use his weight, meaning he
That's
wasn't going to
true. He
lean
didn't
on
fight like a big guy.
Jose." And that was Jose's logic why he had a chance. Canelo isn't one of these guys who's really going to lean on you, push Crawford, tire him out that way. He's going to try to do it with hard body punches and yeah, but it's not gonna be as physical a thing as fighting a David Benavidez. I mean, Crawford wouldn't go to the ring with a David Benavidez. Benavidez would be too physical for Crawford, too big a mountain. But Canelo's not a truly big guy. No matter what.
No, he's barely. He's about 5'7" and maybe 5'8" tops, and that's what Crawford is.
Middleweight, regardless of what his weight is. He's a natural middleweight in reality. No matter, forget about him fighting a super middleweight.
That would be some win if Crawford did fight him and beat him. That would be off the chart, jumping up that big, because I do think that could be a bridge too far. And there's no doubt Crawford's a better fighter, but I can't see him hurting Canelo. But I'm not sure he can stand up to Canelo.
Frank, we argued this before. Crawford would not get a free pass against Canelo. If he loses, to say, well, he took a chance, he went a bigger guy, very little penalty. What's at stake for Crawford is this. If he decisively beat Canelo and he dazzled and looked great, we're talking about putting him on the list of all-time greats. I mean, we could start comparing him maybe to Sugar Ray Robinson. You know, I mean,
if he did that, Jack, if he took Canelo apart,
dominated,
that would be that win would be off the charts, no doubt.
Yeah,
but who knows? But he has to fight this year. It's not going to be Boots. If it's not going to be Canelo, Jack, then who is it?
That's one thing with Crawford, his patience. He's getting older. He's been patient his whole career. He's not panicked. He doesn't panic. Some fighters wait, and eventually they get the fights. I remember Bernard Hopkins. He was waiting things out. Eventually he got the fights. Andre Ward, he had his contractual difficulties with the Goosens who promoted him at the time. He waited things out. Eventually he got his big fights. I mean, yeah, but sometimes you could wait and it never happens for you. The talk is if Tim Tszyu beats Keith Thurman, he's not a lock. Tszyu should win the fight, but he's not a lock to beat Keith Thurman.
Tszyu's going to beat he's going to beat the hell out of Thurman.
I like Tszyu in the fight, but I can't say with absolute certainty.
I don't see any way Thurman wins that fight.
But then the talk is Crawford and Tszyu. And Tszyu,
I would love to see that fight. That's a legit super fight. Crawford moving up in his first fight.
And Tszyu strikes me the type of fight will fight anyone. He talks about the fighters today, and he put them down compared to the old timers. Tszyu says the old timers
yes, he
would
did.
fight anyone, not these guys of today. Tszyu will have his chance. Let's see if he avoids anyone. So far, he hasn't avoided anyone. Unlike a David Benavidez, who could fight David Morrell, we would like to see that fight. That would be a keep busy fight that we would accept. Say, hey, that's interesting. But Benavidez, he avoids.
He believes he's entitled to fight Canelo next.
Canelo, and he's not. Of course, we want to see that fight, him against Canelo. Absolutely, one of the biggest fights in boxing. But he's not entitled to it per se.
Jack, do we both like Teofimo over Ortiz?
Yeah, Teofimo's of a different level. Ortiz is a good, solid fighter. Teofimo comes under the more the category of an elite fighter, as long as he's not off. If he's on top of his game, Teofimo's an elite type fighter. Okay, and
Yeah, I
Ortiz,
agree. He's a pound for pound when he's on. He's just like sometimes,
he's on.
you know, he's on and off. Jack, today is it's 47 years ago today that Sugar Ray Leonard turned pro against Luis Vega. And Leonard weighed 141. He went on to be the fighter of the decade for the 80s. Do you think there has been a greater fighter, pound for pound fighter, who we've seen turn pro since 1977?
Oh, from 77 on, because you can make an argument pound for pound, Duran at his peak was actually better than Leonard slightly.
But he turned pro in 67. So I'm going
right.
since Leonard turned pro, has there been a fighter greater than Sugar Ray Leonard at any weight?
I'd say no, but consider this, okay? No fighter, has ever shown the level of dominance from 77 on that Roy Jones did. Okay, Jones won the 88 Olympics. When Jones was in his prime, no other fighter dominated continuously like that. But with that said, Jones didn't have to fight someone of the caliber of a Tommy Hearns his weight. I mean, the closest he came was Hopkins, and Hopkins did win 3-4 rounds.
They won 4 rounds of the 12, right?
Clearly, and
Jones lapped James Toney.
Was not quite at his peak yet. Yeah.
I think based on what Leonard brought to the ring, and remember, Jack, we may not have even seen his prime. Like Ali, he was taken out of boxing at age 25. But based on what he brought to the ring, how technically proficient he was, they forget what a puncher he was, how fast he was. And it's like he stopped Benitez, who was undefeated. He stopped Hearns, who was undefeated in his prime. He beat Duran when Duran was 72-1, made him quit. Beat an undefeated Kaluli, sat out for how many years? 5 years, or one fight in 5 years and came back. And I think he clearly beat Hagler. I don't know if we've seen a fighter who brought as much to the ring as Sugar Ray Leonard did, Jack, in these past 47 years. It's just a shame his career wasn't a little bit. He didn't fight more. He only fought 40 times, but boy, did he cover a lot of ground in those 40 fights.
And it's easy to forget how popular he was, too. He was marketed the right way. That fight against Louis Vega, Frank, they had it in an arena, okay, in Landover, Maryland, where you could hear the crowd. You felt like you were there. Compare that to Howard Davis Jr. Leonard and Howard Davis Jr. started their pro careers as equals because they were good buddies, great amateurs.
And Davis was the Val Baker winner in the Olympics.
Exactly. But they were pretty even. But Davis, he has his pro debut in the studio against the fighter Louis Resto, wins a boring decision against him. So the management, of Leonard was better than the management of Howard Davis. But with that said, you could only take Davis so far compared to Leonard because Davis did have flaws. Even though he should have won a world title at some point, it didn't quite happen for him. And, it's what it is.
Leonard had the it factor. He was flashier than Davis. He had more power. He had the name. Cosell helped him build him up. He marketed himself. I mean, he was marketed beautiful. And think about this. Sugar Ray Leonard made $40,000 in his pro debut.
Yeah.
2 years later, Marvin Hagler fights Vito Antuofermo for the middleweight title, undisputed middleweight title. And guess what he made? 40 grand.
Yeah, Vito got 150 for that fight, 150,000. He always felt, he should have gotten more because he compared what Leonard and Benitez made the same night. Benitez got, I think,
Leonard made $1 million and Benitez made $1.1 million.
Right. And Vito felt, well, I'm the defending world middleweight champion. I should have made more, but he was comparing himself to an icon like Leonard. And
Superstars, yes.
The only way Leonard could have gotten Benitez in the ring was Benitez getting a little more, because fighters value championships more than champions more. Everyone knew Benitez was the champion. So Leonard couldn't just pick up some sanctioning body belt and call himself the champion. He knew he had to get through Benitez, who won the world welterweight title by beating Carlos Palomino, who beat John Stracey, who beat the great Jose Napoli.
Jose Napoli's right.
I think we ran out of time, Frank.
All right, Jack.
I think we're fading out.
Sorry for the cold and the interruptions and the golfing.
No, you were good. You were good, Frank. You were good.
I'll be better next week.
Tonight.
I passed the test. Okay, next week we'll talk about the Tiafimo fight.
Absolutely.